Hey everybody, welcome back. Well, I've been gone for a couple weeks. I was on retreat and then went home to see my mama, and now I'm back. And anyway, hope you found something to watch, to learn, and hope you didn't give up on me as well. Hopefully we can be able to continue. And we're the 31st Sunday, which means we're quickly coming to the end of the church year. A few more weeks and it'll be Advent, and as you know, then Christmas. And our gospel today is from the chapter of 19 of Luke. A very familiar story. It is from the story of the Zacchaeus who wanted to see Jesus. They climbed a tree. The last few weeks we've been having parables, and sometimes we think parables are actually real events because Luke does such a great job, and Jesus in telling the story, it just seems real, right? The widow asking the judge for justice, and you can picture it, you can see it in your mind, the tax collector and the Pharisee in the temple praying. They are real people. But this time, though, this Sunday, we actually have a real incident that happened. This is not a parable, not a story, but an occasion in the life of Jesus. And so I read, "At that time, Jesus came to Jericho, intended to pass through the town. Now a man there named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector and also a wealthy man, was seeking to see who Jesus was. But he could not see him because of the crowd, for he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree in order to see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When he reached that place, Jesus looked up and said, 'Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house.' He came down quickly, received him with joy. And when they all saw this, they began to grumble, saying, 'He has gone to stay at the house of a sinner.' But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, 'Behold, half my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. If I have extorted anything from anyone, I shall repay it 4 times over.' And Jesus said to him, 'Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is the descendant of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost.'" If you have been attending church any amount of time in your life, you're probably fairly familiar with the story of Zacchaeus, short, probably under 5 foot, but he's curious. By this time, the 19th chapter of Jesus, we're kind of pretty far well into the Gospel of Luke, and so Jesus has built up a reputation. I guess you could somewhat of a celebrity or famous, and so he hears about him, wants to see him. And so he runs ahead and he climbs the tree. Now he's a tax collector, not just a tax collector, but a chief tax collector. So he's above, so that means he does quite well for himself, and we know that he's a tax collector, and also we know that he is rich. And so, particularly in the Gospel of Luke, those are 2 strikes against him. One, he's a tax collector. Again, we heard how we spoke about tax collectors throughout the years, how they work for the Romans, which means being a traitor, and not only working for the enemy, but they charge a higher rate so they can get a good cut. So they, in a sense, almost stealing, robbing their own people. So they're not really well liked. And in Luke, who favors the poor, he's rich. And again, there's sort of a negative connotation to that as well. Poor Zacchaeus. And by him running, by the way, and climbing the tree, it's usually grown men would not run. It's below their dignity. Because when they ran, they had to probably hold up their tunic and show their legs, which back then you didn't do. It was improper. So he sort of lowered himself, embarrassed himself, and even climbing a tree, think about that. Some grown man sitting in a tree. So Zacchaeus may have been a chief tax collector, may have been rich, but he does portray here a sense of humility. What's interesting about his name, in Greek it's Zacchaeus, and in Hebrew is Zakkai, which in Hebrew means clean or innocent. That's a fine word to describe a tax collector as clean and innocent. And that time we would probably see he's anything but innocent, he's anything but clean, but that's his name. Anyway, so Jesus comes into town and he says, I want to come to your house to have dinner with you. Sort of have things backwards, Jesus, doesn't he? Usually wait for the host to invite you to someone's house. You don't typically invite yourself. But Jesus sees something in Zacchaeus and reads him well, and he invites himself. And this is scandalous for the crowd when they see this, because going to someone's home and dining with them, it means you're in communion with them. You're accepting them. There's a family sort of tie, having dinner, breaking bread together. It's more than just having a meal. It's quite symbolic. So they say, what? You are in communion with what they would call a sinner. Again, whenever Jesus met someone who may have lived outside let's say, the boundaries, the law, the rules, it wasn't so much condoning their actions, but sort of bring them away from that and have a change of a lifestyle. And you can't do that from a distance. You got to be with people. You got to make them comfortable. You got to talk to them. You got to befriend them. And that's how it is. So Jesus knows that. And so he goes to his home. And Zacchaeus has repentance. You may have heard these different preachers who give you a formula to recite, and then you're saved, right? If you say these words, you're saved. And you think, really? That's all it took? Just say 4 or 5 sentences and I'm good? I'm sure there's more than that. They intend it, but at least on face value, that's the way it seems. You recite this phrase, and even, I guess, if you mean it too at the time, but yeah. But Zacchaeus, it's not just empty words, right? I mean, he makes a drastic change. He makes a drastic change, right? I give half my possessions, I shall give to the poor. Half his possessions to the poor. If he extorted anybody, I shall pay him 4 times over. Think about that. I mean, that is a conversion. Was it Martin Luther said that the conversion of there's 3 conversions: the heart, the mind, and the wallet. And the most difficult one is the wallet. Let's face it. If someone begins generous with their money, you would say, they're pretty serious about it. They're committed. It's convincing. Anybody can recite a phrase and say some words, but when you start giving your money away, and because that was really commanded in the Old Testament. It's a Jewish tradition, a mitzvah. So this real lesson was said, I command you, open wide your hand to your brother. It's a commandment of God, though it's not the 10 commandments. It's not an option for Christians to help the poor. You give alms. And Luke tells us when you give alms, help the poor, you sort of build up your your heavenly kingdom. Not that you earn, through that, but your reward will be great when we give. And he calls him a son of Abraham. Now, those contemporaries of Zacchaeus, being that he's a tax collector, working for the enemy, cheating, well, he can't be one of us. But Jesus said, no, he's a son of Abraham. He is our family. Yes, he may have, gone outside the lines and done things that he should not have done, but he's still part of the family. He accepted him. He's a son of Abraham. And so with that, as we meditate on this, Zacchaeus, we look at ourselves. My own conversion, your conversion, is it words? It's simply doing something that's easy. Where's the demand? Where's the sacrifice? If you want to see it, check your pocketbook, check your wallet. What do you do with your, how generous are you? If you're really convinced, that Jesus takes care of our needs and we have to help the poor, we shall show it. Anyone can recite prayers. Anyone can sit here on a Sunday, which is all well and good and necessary, but we really show ourselves when we give, when we're generous. Actions speak louder than words. God bless you.